I would be its mum, and you could just go off your birth control and not tell your boyfriend. What's he gonna do when you're already pregnant? What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I am your average Redditor, and today we're going to be looking at r/EntitledParents. EM wants teen daughter to get pregnant so she can buy the baby to fix her relationship. This is a tale from living with my own crazy former incubation unit, known to some as a mother. EM, our entitled mother, and my personal female genetic donor, and me is me. This happened a few years ago when I was about 16 or so, but I remember it pretty well, give or take some minor inaccuracies. EM would share her relationship troubles with me. From her perspective, her BF just doesn't do enough for her. In reality, her and her BF fought constantly over everything. She'd get annoyed as soon as he walked in the same room as her. EM unnecessarily informed me that they hadn't had sex in months. She'd had him arrested twice for domestic violence, even though she was beating him, and some days he'd get so high that he'd run around the house naked and vomiting and didn't share his stuff with EM, etc. So EM is starting to see there might be some issues that need fixing and declares the best course of action is to have a baby with her BF. Problem with that though is that she was never supposed to be able to have kids at all, or so she told my dad before popping out 2 miracle babies and getting that sweet child support. However, at this point she's in her mid-40s, so it's probably legit this time. I listened to EM whine about her inability to have another baby and how she probably can't adopt with having had multiple police reports involving our residents in the past year. I tentatively tried to express why it's a really terribly bad idea when EM suddenly has an epiphany. You know, I've heard of people who buy babies from people who don't want them, like teens who get pregnant on accident. I dunno, do you remember how much you didn't like being around your last boyfriend's kid? That was because he didn't raise his kid right. I would make such a good mum to a little baby. Me internally, you don't make a good mum to the kids you have currently. I could just stay home with the baby. I could dress it up in cute little outfits. You know, if you were pregnant, that would be perfect. What? When was your last period? I'm not pregnant. Well, you could get pregnant. If you did, I'll give you a couple $100 and you could just give me custody. I don't want to be a teen mum, thanks. And I don't think my boyfriend would be okay with me getting pregnant. EM is visibly getting annoyed that I don't see the brilliance of her plan, but trying to be nice to get me on board. You wouldn't have to take care of it at all besides just helping me out every now and again. I would be its mum, and you could just go off your birth control and not tell your boyfriend. What's he gonna do when you're already pregnant? We go back and forth for a bit. She's trying to tell me why this is completely normal and fine, and I'm trying to explain why this is super effed, and she's basically not hearing me anymore. Then her plan develops further. Maybe we could find a way to get you pregnant with my boyfriend's baby, so it'd really be his and he couldn't just up and leave. So what, you want to turkey bastard me with your boyfriend's semen? We're both adults here and we're girlfriends, right? We can talk about this kind of stuff. I'm getting a headache. I'm gonna go and lie down. I had migraines all the time when I was pregnant. I'm not pregnant. Well, just think about it. You'd be doing something really good for this family and I would pay you too. She brought it up a couple times in passing after that, and she even tried throwing out a pack of my birth control at one point, but I just kept not being pregnant, so she eventually let it go. This lady is possibly the most crazy entitled parent I think I've ever come across in one of these stories. What is going on? She wants her own daughter to have her boyfriend's child and then the mum just steal it for herself. Nice, good logic. Oh, and the daughter has actually provided an update. So I was thinking about it a bit more and I remembered something that was kind of weird. Shortly after EM had this conversation with me, her BF insisted that I go with him to get food so we could spend some bonding time one-on-one and talk. He'd never done this in the 2 years they'd been together. I honestly barely spoke to the man. He also started talking to me about how a baby would fix their relationship problems and if only we could have a baby. When it happened, I just thought it was weirdly coincidental. I was more confused and anxious for the sudden desire for bonding time. So I'm not saying this was the case, but I think that he might have actually been trying to have the you should get pregnant and give us the baby talk with me. Oh my gosh, this story gets even worse. These two are just stupid, selfish and crazy, and I hope that OP gets away from them. EM thinks she owns my apartment and that I'm her personal assistant. A bit of context, my mum EM and sister ES live halfway across the country. In the Netherlands, that is about a 90-minute drive. Me and my girlfriend GF live in an apartment away from them. We already had a troubled past with her. EM had to have her house cleaned because there was mold everywhere, so she decided that without consulting me or my GF that she could go to my apartment and stay there for a week. When I came home from work, I saw her sitting on the couch with ES playing on her phone. The following conversation ensued. What are you doing here without any of us? We gave you a key just for emergencies. Yes, there is an emergency. My house is being cleaned and I don't want to stay at a hotel. So you drove for 90 minutes to stay here. What about your job and ES's school? It isn't isn't a break because I have to work. I am a teacher. We will just go really early in the morning and be there in time. Let me discuss this with my girlfriend because this is our house. I called my GF and explained. She said fine, but I had to make a few rules for them. So the rules were not to go into our bedroom or my study room and to stay out of the liquor cabinets. They could sleep on the couch and eat with us for dinner. It went well for 2 days. They went to work and school really early and came back late and didn't go where they didn't belong until day 3 out of 5 where I got about 20 calls from ES, so in my break I called to see what happened. This was around 3 PM. Hey, my mum said you're gonna pick me up at 1:30. Where are you? I won't do such a thing. I have to work until 5. So what am I supposed to do? I hung up. Later that night, EM and ES came home. Why didn't you pick up your sister? Because I had to work till 5 just like the other days. Then why didn't you say that you had family over? Because you sprang this whole visit upon me. EM shouts and tells me to pay for train tickets, then runs into my study, breaking the lock in progress. You get 5 minutes to get your stuff and leave my house or I will call the cops. She left, but later I got a call from her saying that I had to pay for a hotel and her dinner. I blocked her on every single social media. Well, at least OP has now discontinued contact with this crazy mum. These 2 EMs that we've met so far have been absolutely mental. He also says that he's gotten the keys back and replaced the lock. That is a good move. Classmates' parents refused to give me any food because I'd apparently sinned. I was probably 5 and I wasn't very proficient with English since I had just immigrated from China and knew very little about the language when this happened. A schoolmate's parents invited me over to have dinner while my parents were out. There are a couple of things that you should know from back then. Number 1, this was a very religious family while my parents were atheist agnostic at the time. And number 2, the kid and I did not like each other. We sat down to dinner and as soon as everyone was seated, I took a bite like we did at home. That was when the mother reached across the table and yanked the plate away from me. In this house, she said, glaring at me, we pray before we eat. We are not heathens. I looked at my classmate to see what to do. I put my hands together like he did. Not like that, she screeched. Apparently, I needed to fold my hands properly. I did as I was told. The dad then proceeded to give what had to be the longest prayer ever. It probably wasn't long at all, but I was 5, hungry, didn't really understand what was happening, and had never heard a prayer before. After he finished, the mum looked at me and said, for stealing from God, you will wait until after we finish before you eat. She then lectured me on how awful I was and how I was going to hell for not praying properly or knowing about prayer. Reminder, I was 5 years old. My classmate said he wanted seconds when he was done with his plates. She handed him my plates. I didn't get dinner. I started crying because, you know, a hungry 5-year-old. She was screaming at me to stop crying. I was ruining dinner for everyone. This was when my mother rang the doorbell, and at the time she could speak English fairly well, albeit with some mistakes, so she could understand most of what the family was saying. I jumped up and ran to her in tears. Suddenly, the family was all smiles and politeness. She told my mum I was picky so I wouldn't eat my food, so I was probably hungry. We got out the car and my mother asked what really happened. I was not a picky eater. I'd eat anything, still will. I told her everything. My mother stormed out of the car, pounded on the door, and gave the woman a piece of her mind. To this day, I wonder what sect of Christianity they claim to be, because even though I'm not Christian, I've known many for years, and I'm pretty sure God never said to treat someone else's kid like absolute trash before. Well, you're right about that. Using one's religion as an excuse to act like this is just about the worst thing that I can imagine, especially to a 5-year-old who knows nothing better. Of course, the vast majority of religious people use their religion in a positive way, but then you get some crazy people like this who ruin it for everyone. Anyway, that is the end of another episode of r/EntitledParents. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, like, share, and subscribe for more Reddit content from me.